Ahoy, gang! Dan Ciaramitaro here, writer and artist of Snot-Ball Comics. And as always, this is Playing With Myself, the show where we talk toys. And today, we'll be playing with the Hasbro G.I. Joe Classified Destro version 2 and Iron Grenadier Despoiler. And this one is a pretty big deal for me, kids. So, ready or not, let's whip it out. Fucking A, guys. Check out this sexy bastard right here, fresh out of the package. And, to coin a phrase, comes with everything you see here. And this time around, this guy does not come loaded to the gills, but that's okay because he is going to come with everything you're really going to want here, with one major exception. So, you're not going to have a bunch of junk left over for the junk drawer. But let's take a look at what he does come with, and he does come with this box, and this box does come with this retro design window right here where that figure used to be. And of course, where that figure is now is front and center of our display right here, and he's looking pretty fucking badass. This is, of course, Destro version 2, the one with the gold head. And he does come with this other gold head right here, as well as all the arms you're gonna need. And those arms, of course, are weapons right here, which we do have a ceremonial shield up front, and we do have this long ceremonial blade. Those are both very nice, and they both lead us to the armament of them all, Destro's Despoiler right here. The vehicle that has both the stupidest and the most wicked awesome name of all the vehicles around. So, now that we've seen them all displayed right here, let's dig a little deeper. Alright, so starting from the top right here, we do have this badass vehicle right here. This is, of course, Destro's Despoiler, and as I said, it does have a stupid but very badass name. It is badass, of course, because Despoiler sounds pretty fucking cool, but it's stupid because Despoiler isn't really that much of a word, and it's a dumb word to begin with, and no military would ever call their vehicle that. However, Destro did, mostly because it fits very well with his name, and I'm not going to begrudge him that, nor am I going to begrudge Hasbro for, once again, just like they did back in 1988, pretty much padding the price tag on this figure. Obviously, everybody is going to want the Destro version 2 figure. He is pretty fucking awesome in the G.I. Joe ranks there. And just like before, they decided that this absolutely was going to have to be a deluxe figure, so they packaged it with this air chariot right here. And just like in 1988, it is a little on the stripped down side. There isn't much to it. It's pretty much one big hunk of plastic, but it is a beautiful hunk of plastic. So we will take a look at some of the features here, but I would call anything on here either an accessory or some sort of an art deco. There is very, very little in the way of features on this guy. Obviously, as an adult collector, I am mostly just going to be displaying this thing, so it does not need a bunch of play features, which is good because it has absolutely zero of those. But it does have a lot of very, very nice details, so it will look look good in your display. But I can tell you right now, other reviewers are going to come after this thing. For me, it is exactly like it was when I was a child. It's super fucking cool looking, and it doesn't need to be much else. To begin with, most of this vehicle right here is in this shiny black plastic. It is very menacing, and it is very frightening for the G.I. Joes, and in this case, for the Cobras, because as you can see right here on the deco right there and right there, as well as right here on these fins, you are going to see that this is not a Cobra vehicle. This is a vehicle determined to be part of Destro's Iron Grenadiers. And that is because Destro has had enough of Cobra Commander's shit, and he is removing himself and starting his own army. And why not? He is the munitions expert anyway. Why not cut out the end man in this case, as it were? But we do have a cross sword deco right up there in the front. It does have a very classical look to it, as well as these two lions right here on either side. Also, again, in the gold right there. We do have a lot of gold deco on here all around. We do have these very nice gold jets in the back. They look really good. They're pretty badass back there. We also do have the two fins, like I mentioned. We do have a very, very red seat right here. That is going to be the accent color that comes along with the black and gold, and you will also see that reflected in the figure here coming up. The only color on here that is neither black nor gold nor red is going to be this white right here. Now, it's interesting because the white here does look like a glyph, some sort of a Star Wars or perhaps Lord of the Rings glyph there, but it does actually say something in numbers and letters. It does say 573, I believe, U. However, they did print it in a mirror image on this side, so while the side closest to me is very much legible, the side that I am pointing toward you, which would be the jet's right side, it does look incomprehensible and more like it is from some fantasy property. There is this nice little gold trim on half of the faceplate there where these two gold missiles go in. That is a nice attention to detail. I think that if it wasn't there, you probably wouldn't notice too much, but this makes it look a little bit more worth the price right there, and so that's very, very nice. Coming now to the bottom right here, we do have these two gold runners. We do have a gold air vent right there, and that will bring you to the one and only play feature that we have on this figure, and that is going to be these two cannons right here in the front. And of course, the cannons do turn left to right. They do have the gold right there on the cannons. The cannons themselves are black right there, a ribbed detail on there. And we do have this silver right here, which is the bandolier of bullets. So that is it for the most part. There is one more detail right there, which I will show you right here. And that is, of course, this cockpit. And this cockpit is very, very beautifully designed. We do have this digital display screen right here. It's going to come in, of course, your very intimidating red and gold. And it's going to have all of your gauges and gizmos. It's going to have everything you're going to need to aim and fire these gold missiles right here. And of course, what cockpit is complete without your joystick steering column here? But that does bring me to some of the cons of this vehicle. And like I said, this is pretty much just printing money for Hasbro. They obviously aren't going to put too much extra into this guy. It is not a HasLab exclusive, so it's going to be pulled back on the extra features. But I will show you 3 things that I'm kind of disappointed in here. One of them is the steering column. As I said, it would be very nice if it did move around in there, but it does not. It is just fixed in there. So that is, a missed opportunity. Also, another problem I have here is that these flaps right here are not flappy flaps. They do not flap. They look like they should flap. Certainly they could have put a peg through there that could have given them a little bit of a flap there. They do have that sort of a feature on the trouble bubbles, so it's a shame they don't have it here. But again, it is not a deal breaker. And while this last one is a bit more annoying, still not too big of a problem. But these 2 missiles right up in the front do not fire out of this. There is no spring load in there. And you have not 1, but 2 raised details right up here in the front that would have made a very, very, very nice trigger for that. But that is not the case. However, like I said, this guy is just for display purposes, and they did a really good job of at least putting on a lot of different detail on here to make it worth the extra couple of bucks and to make it look very, very nice inside of your collection. And so before we put this in said collection, let's go ahead and take a look at Destro version 2 before we get him into this nice juicy cockpit here. All right, kids, and here we have him in all of his glory. Cobra's main arms dealer turned defector, one James McCullough Destro. And he is looking really, really nice right here in the black and gold with your red accent right there. He is a very beautiful figure, much like he was back in the late 1980s. And back in the late 1980s, this was my Destro. My G.I. Joe play did not have a Destro in it for most of the time I was playing with them, and so it was very refreshing to get this guy, because unlike the G.I. Joe characters, who only had 3 really good version 2 updates, that being Storm Shadow, Roadblock, and General Hawk, the Cobras did have 1 or 2 version 2 updates that were pretty fucking cool. And you'll be seeing a couple of them later, but they did tend to put a little effort into their version 2 updates so that kids who didn't have those figures, I think, could get a pretty badass figure and not a goofy knockoff like they did with so many other version 2 variants. But some of them they put a lot of care into. This is one of them. I'm pretty sure you can fucking feel it through the screen. If you aren't already familiar with this guy, he is looking super fucking fly in this outfit. But let's take a look at everything that he is going to come with accessory-wise. And like I said, this is a little stripped down. I think for the most part, what you're getting here did come with the 1988 figure with those 2 extras that I pointed out earlier. And so let's take a look at those. Right here, we do have this ceremonial shield. We do have this very ornate, beautiful shield front on there with the Destro mask, as well as this dagger going through it. We then do have some details in there. And if you do turn this around and take a look, it does have down here a nice little grip for the hand. It then also has a grip from the shield that's going to go around the arm. We do have 2 details on either side that are going to make this a very slim area there and will keep it very snugly on the arm. And that would be if you ever intend to put it on the arm, which I don't know that I will. I may take a look and see how it looks for him to have a sword and a shield inside the cockpit of the Despoiler there, but my guess is that this won't work very well. Like I said, I want to put his hands on those joysticks, and he's not going to be able to do that holding two weapons there. So I don't know if this might not end up in that junk drawer I was talking about, but it may. And it would be kind of a shame. It's a pretty nice little detail there. I can tell you that this fellow, which also is very, very beautifully detailed, will also likely not end up anywhere in my collection. It will probably end up in that junk drawer, despite looking very, very nice. And if we do take a look at this beautiful sword right here, you will see that it is made in this gold plastic right here, and everything else on there is a paint app. We do have the black right here on the grip. We do have the black right here on the base of the sword. We do have a very nice, tiny little red gem detail on either side of this sword. That's very, very nice. And we do have this silver, almost silver gold of this blade right here. Like I say, this is a beautiful piece, but it will probably not end up in my collection, though I may bring it back in from time to time and recycle it if I want a different look for this figure, but it will not be the main look, because he does, in fact, have two swords, although we won't quite get to that second one just yet. Instead, we will take a look at this second head right here, which is, of course, the angry mouth open head. You tend to like to have these neutral faces on these Joe characters. That is, of course, what they always had before. They do tend to like to give Destro these angry faces, and I would almost certainly put this on here, but unfortunately, he does have a problem on mine at the very least, which is when they sprayed these teeth on, the white of the teeth got right back in the back of his throat, and so he doesn't have the two white teeth, the pink tongue, and the black throat there. It's white teeth, a little bit of black, and a big white strip right down the middle there. It doesn't look very good close up, and the farther you get away from it, the less detail you're going to see on that mouth. But as I've stated on numerous occasions, yours may not have this same problem. They may have gotten the paint right on yours, and he probably looks a little bit more badass if they didn't fuck that up on there. White is a really bad color to get in the wrong place. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So I am going to keep him with his neutral face right there, which again, might have been my preference anyway. I do tend to like those neutral faces. I think they do try to get away with some expressions every now and again, and I do think mileage varies on whether they look good or not. And in this case, this one just didn't work out for me. But what does work out for me very nicely is this pistol right here. It is, again, in that gold plastic. It does have this very nice black paint app on the handle there. It is a very nice sort of cowboy gun, which kind of goes with his regal appearance there. I do not have any version of Wild Bill, but I would bet you dollars to donuts that this gun right here may be a copy of Wild Bill's, but that is not a problem. It is a very nice looking gun. If there were any detail on here that would make me think that I am wrong in that assessment, it would probably be this little hook on the back. It does have that sort of wavy hook motif that we're going to see in the sword. So this may not be a reissue, But if it is a very nice reissue, and you will be hearing no complaints from this fucking guy. So let's go ahead and take a look at our final accessory, which I have right here on the hip of my Destro. And unlike the Destro from 1988, who did come with a hook on the side, this actually locks right in, as it has a little peg, actually a fairly substantial peg right there on the chains, and a nice sort of discreet hole in the hip there. If you aren't wearing it, it isn't too glaring of a detail. But what it also does have that the 80s figure had, and this is not a positive, this is definitely a negative, and it is that it has this hanging effect with the chain. You are obviously supposed to link it on his hip. It is very much supposed to look like gravity is pulling it down, but that super duper sucks. This would have been a very nice opportunity to get a nice little plastic chain link right there that then had that peg, and then it would sort of swoop around. It would look a lot more natural. Of course, it looks good on the figure. It looks as though it is hanging. It looks like it's supposed to look, but it is not as cool as it would have been. And again, I kind of feel like it's a little bit of a cut corner there, which would have been nice if they had fixed that up. Like I said, I know there's going to be other reviewers who kind of shit their pants over this stuff, but for me, it's more of a jeepers, I wish they'd done it sort of situation. But what they did do, which is very nice, is that they do have some very flowery detail on this part of the sheath right here, which of course goes without saying is in this gold plastic with the black painted on there. They also have that same sort of flowery detail on the bottom gold piece right there, which is very nice. And much like the gun, this does have that wavy, jagged metal detail right there on the grip of the sword for this sort of hand protector right there. I know they have a name, I can't remember what they are. At any rate, that is a very nice detail, and again, without saying, this is gold plastic with the black on the grip there. It does have this other little hook right in the front. That's all very, very nice. The sword itself is made out of that gold plastic, and much like the ceremonial sword, this one does also have one red jewel on either side, right up there at the top of the hilt. And I don't feel like I'm losing anything when I get rid of that sword. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of housekeeping here. And we'll get rid of that display stand. We will get rid of all of his toys, so that we have an opportunity to look at my toy. And again, take a look at this figure right here. He does look very, very much like a fascist dictator, which is what he hopes to one day be. So, you know, dress for the job you want, not the job you got. And our pal Destro figured that shit out over 40 years ago. So, let's take a look at how he is dressed here. Starting, of course, with the head, and we do have the gold head here. That is a gold paint app on there. It would be very nice if this was sort of a vacuum sealed, sort of a chrome head. That would be super cool, but he looks good like this. And if you do look at his eyes are pretty cool. He does have black on the whites of his eyes, as well as some dark circles under the eyes, which is a black wash, not the full black. It just sort of grayed out a little bit. And he does have gold for his irises, which is very nice. and even a little bit of a gold detail for the glint in his eyes. Considering how small those eyes are, that is a very nice attention to detail. And so, coming down on this figure, we are going to see that he is in this black, standard black, from top to bottom. He does have these ribbed parts in his vest right here in the front. He does, as any Destro should, have this bitchin' 1980s popped collar, which I would have had on my shirt today, but I can't get it to stay up. It looks all wobbly and gross, so I had to flip it down for you. But Destro doesn't. His is popped appropriately. Before we move from the front vest right here, I want to point out this very beautiful detail, which is this red maroon ascot that he has on. It's pretty fucking badass, and much like his two swords and the classic Destro, he does have one red jewel there with a gold trim on it. It's pretty fucking rad. So he looks pretty fucking intense. And of course, when it comes to intense, he does have this shoulder piece right here that does have these 3 gold blades arced up over his shoulder. That is going to give him some protection, and it's also, much like everything else on here, gonna make him look like he's somebody you're not gonna wanna fuck with. So that is pretty good for Mr. Destro right there. These shoulder pieces right here are in whatever color plastic they're in, and you don't know what that is because the black and the gold are both paint applications, and again, that makes this look like it's made out of plastic or fiberglass in his reality, whereas the rest of it looks like it is made out of leather or perhaps some other sort of wool or something for the arms, which brings us to these arms, which do have that two-tone on them. The arms themselves are in something of a very heavy gray, whereas the gauntlets down here on his wrists and on his forearms are very much like these pieces right here, where they have a very, very, very shiny black paint app on there, which of course is meant to make it look like this piece right here is more metallic than the arm itself. Coming down to the waist here, we do have this very, very maroon red colored belt, and this belt has beautiful detail on it. It does not only have the black belt straps, but all of the straps and the belt itself do have a gold trim on it, as well as the first of many right here in the middle of these gold colored skulls. You are going to see that motif all the way down the figure, and it starts right here just above the pelvis area, if you will. Anyway, coming down, we then do have the black plastic. Again, I'm sure that's supposed to connote some sort of leather. And we do have these big S&M boots that come all the way up to the top of his thighs. There's no other way to put it, friends, so just accept it and move on with your life. But Leather Daddy Destro here does have these fuck me boots, and they do have these really fucking cool gold studs around them, so I won't hold it against him. If you're going to wear them, you might as well accessorize, and he's done a pretty bitchin' job of that right there. And this big leather boot does come down and is covered by a second swashbuckling sized boot right here with a nice big cuff on it. And yes, if you're paying attention, that means he is wearing boots over his fuck me boots, which again, if you're gonna go big. And he definitely learned that lesson because he does on either side here have another of those gold skulls right there on either leg, right on the outside of those boots there. And of course, the shoes or the feet on these figures is usually where all of the excitement is lost, but they have one more little detail for you, which is the gold tip on this shoe, which is pretty good for waffle making and kicking through the shin. If you know, you know. Anyway, coming along to the back here, we are not done yet because we do also have a gold tipped heel right here, which is again very, very nice. Coming up the legs, we're going to see some of the detail repeated from the front. We do have these gold studs on his Pretty Woman boots right there. We do have another little gold piece on the back of the belt there. That is not a belt buckle, but it is a little detail right there. We do mostly now just have the black there. And again, we have whatever detail is up here comes around back there, as well as the gold on these blades right here. And this does bring me to the highlight of both this figure and every previous version of the figure that came before, which is this beautiful blood red cape slash sash that he does have coming from this one little gold detail, which is nothing more than a little button there. There is no skull on it. I guess they felt they didn't need to put them everywhere. And now that is all the detail on this figure. And like I said, he does look pretty cool. But let's start to get into his articulation, and this is where we're going to run into a couple of little problems. Pretty much all of those problems are organized right here in the head. Now you see the head does go up and down like it should. It has a ball joint in there, and presumably there's also a rocker in the chest that would hunch the neck down a little bit. The problem here is that if that is there, it is either really, really tight or it is very, very shallow. It does not move at all. So he can't really roll his head around. He can't really push his chin up in any way. If you have him bent down, he can't look up as well. So you can't really do a whole lot of poses where you have him crunched at the ab because his head will point in any direction you point his body in, and you're not going to have a lot of opportunities for up and down movement, but you do have a decent amount of left and right movement. And so that's pretty good. But when it comes to any sort of a head roll, that is simply not going to occur. So plan your posing according to that. Coming down, we now have some more issues with articulation, and that is that the arms cannot go anywhere because these shoulder pads really, really hold it down. You can move them up to a decent degree, but moving the arm up under them is not very easy to do. But you can get him pretty much right there. Nice little 90-degree angle, I suppose. Again, it looks kind of cool with him pointing off in the distance there, but that's about the best you can do. And as you can see, it is even pushing it down from where I have it. So that is not fantastic, but I'm sure these will loosen up from time to time. He does have the crunch in the shoulder, so he can bring his shoulder, so he can roll his shoulder back nicely. He can push his shoulder forward nicely, so you do get a little crunch there you don't get on other figures. He does have a nice little swivel on his bicep, and that goes pretty good, but again, it tends to run into some things. It is a nice little swivel though, and my guess is you actually can get that all the way around, and it probably loosen up on me a little bit too if I keep fucking with it. One of the things I will say is very nice about this figure is that his joints and such are pretty tight, which can hamper your ability to pose them when you get the guy, but also when you manage to get him to pose, he's going to stay where you put him, and he isn't going to start flopping around in a week or a week and a half, so that's pretty good. We do have the standard double jointed elbow right there. Of course, like a lot of these G.I. Joe or Cobra figures, he does have a nice little bicep there, and that means that even though you can push this all the way down, it won't go much farther than that right there, but that's pretty good. He does have the standard and unfortunate 2 pistol grip hands right there. Of course, he comes with 1 firearm and he comes with a sword, and so one of the hands will look correct on there, the other one will look silly, but that's kind of the way they do these things, and there's not really much you could do about it. Some figures come with hands, but those hands are usually pointing fingers or some sort of a thing that gives the character more character and not ones that are useful in any way. But this hand does turn all the way around as you would expect. There is a rocker on the wrist and it sucks. A lot of these suck. It just doesn't do a big hook down like that or come back very well. If you get it and you squeeze it, it starts to loosen up. But even when it's loose, that means that it won't hold very well. Again, you're almost certainly going to be able to get him to do what you want, but it may take a little sacrifice in just giving up a little bit of what you are hoping for. And I don't know how much of the wrist articulation you're going to need anyway, but it isn't great. He can move, but it just kind of goes right back where it wants to be, and that kind of sucks. But, you know, that is what it is. Anyway, we do have this right here. Like I said, he does have this pistol holder. It likes to come off. You won't lose it because it's never going to fall all the way off of this foot, but it may come down to his ankle and then you'll have to push it back up, get nice and tight around his thigh there. But that isn't really articulation so much as it is a piece that wants to fall off. So let's get some leg articulation here. He is going to be able to do the Nazi goose step, which is good because he's certainly fucking dressed for it. So there you go. But if you don't want the goose step, he does also have, like I said, the standard double jointed knee right there. Much like usual, it takes a little bit to get one of those sides to go, but both sides can go, and he can get a nice bend in that knee right there, which is good. Now, one of the problems that comes in here is that a lot of the articulation on the bent knees or whatever is going to roll the ankle in a direction that you may not want it, and it's going to push him over because, as you can see, he does have a nice little waist cut that will allow him to move from side to side. He also can move from side to side because of the joints in the top of the legs, and he has a very nice ab crunch, which you can hear has one click forward and perhaps one click back. No, mostly just the one forward, but that's very nice. You can get him in a nice ab crunch and you could get him to stay that way because he does have a mechanism in there that is going to click into place. So that is very nice there. We are now down, of course, to these feet. But that's where I'm having an issue with this figure, and I tend to have an issue with these figures, and that's because his ankles are a touch looser than I'd like them to be, and that means they will get worse over time. But he does have the rocker for pointing his toe, much like the ones on the wrist there. They suck. They're good for going up. Nobody would ever do that, but not great for pointing down, which is something that people would do. So that sucks. And he has the same sort of issue a lot of these have, which is that you can rock his ankles from side to side, but they also are going to turn while you're doing it. So it's not really easy to get a straight out one like so, but you can get it, see? Just kind of gotta work against the way it's trying to turn. But you do have a very nice ankle rocker there, which means you can get him into the splits to some degree while still keeping his feet on the ground, flat on the ground. So that is pretty fucking cool. All in all, he is a decent figure. He has all the articulation that any self-respecting G.I. Joe classified figure may have, but some of it is a little limited due to his badass costume here. There you have it. Now that we have seen Destro version 2 with all of his paint apps and articulation, I think you know what time it is, and that is time for some comparisons. And here we go, gang, with some comparisons, and we have a lot to look at today. So let's start off strong. Here we have Destro version 2, leader of the Iron Grenadiers. So let's get him with a couple of the Iron Grenadiers right here. And of course, these are troop builders. We do have two of the same character there. And I will be completely honest, I probably never ever would have gotten these guys if it wasn't for this review, but they look super fucking cool right here next to Destro. They are exactly what I assumed they would be, which is that they grew on me after I got them. When I saw pictures of them, I thought they were a little overproduced, but I am happy to take that back, and I'm happy to tell you that if you want this badass set, you should definitely get a couple of these figures because they do look very nice next to their layered Destro right there. Okay, so let's move on to some classic characters, starting obviously with the very classic, very traditional Silver Mask Destro version 1 right here. And of course, Destro would not be Destro without the Baroness. And you have seen this lovely young lady before. This is, of course, the Flight Suit Baroness from our very first episode of Playing With Myself, the Rattler episode. And she looks lovely there. She is the best Baroness in the classified line. So I've got her right here instead of the Catsuit Baroness, which is the more classic version. But the three of them do look very nice together right here. I will say this about the traditional Destro here. Of the two, this is the better figure. And the reason is obvious. It's because he is a newer figure. But this was my very first classified figure. He's the only figure that I bought for about 2 years because he was the closest to the most accurate of the original design. And even there, it's a little off. He has entirely too much ribbing going on. He has too much detail on his boots with the straps and whatnot. However, he is still perfect in comparison to some of the first wave of classified. This was when they started to realize that they really needed to give the fans what they wanted instead of trying to fuck around and come up with it on their own. This was sort of a middle ground there, and I think they did a good job, but I would really, really like to see a better version of this figure, whereas this figure, for what it is perfect head to toe. So, you know, this is going to be my Destro now, but like I said, I do have these figures displayed elsewhere, so they shan't be competing with one another, and so I will move them away before a fight breaks out. And now let's move on to some newer characters in the line, starting with the very beautifully rendered version 2 Cobra Commander in this very beautifully rendered battle armor right here, as well as an old friend of ours from just a couple of reviews back, which is going to be the version 2 Punk Rock Zartan right here. This is a very nice display of variant characters from the classic line. I think in all three cases, these were lovingly produced instead of being the goofy knockoff characters that we got from some of the characters and that we got a lot of over here in the Cobra Commander area. But for me, as a kid, like I said, this was my Cobra Commander from 1987 on. I was more than happy to update to this figure, even though he was not as iconic of a design. I still did the voice, I still had him calling the shots, and this was a pretty great toy in 1987, just as this was my Destro in 1988. And the two of them together look very, very nice. That's a very nice update. And as I've said before, I did not have this figure. He came out a little bit after I was done with G.I. Joe, and I almost certainly would have thought he was a little silly back then, but I think he's pretty fucking awesome now. And as I've said, he's way better than the traditional classified Zartan, who I think is way overproduced. This guy is nice and simple despite all the goofy shit on him, and this guy is gorgeous. So there they are, version 2 Zartan, Destro, and Cobra Commander himself. So take a look at them in all of their updated glory, and we will move them away. And move on to something else that we learned from our good friend Zartan. And that is that these reviews are a hell of a lot more fun when we can take a trip back in time. So, starting out right here, we do have the 1988 classic version 2 of Destro here, with his sword right there, and his cloth goods cape right there, and he looks very, very nice, and he will look very, very nice next to this right here, which is the 25th anniversary of the version 2 Destro. Again, these guys both look very, very nice next to this guy right here in the middle. They do both come with their swords. Their swords are both hooked to their sides there. Interesting, their swords are hooked on their right side, whereas this Destro's sword, should it be hooked to him, which it is not, would be hooked on his left side there. I'm interested in why they made that choice, but it doesn't matter. They all look really cool. They all have something to offer. This guy is pretty much in black with some red and gold details. This guy, much like this guy, does have a darker gray to offset that black. In this case, he does look like he's wearing gray and black and not just two variants of the same black there. So this one is a little less accurate than this guy is, but there is one difference between all three of these guys that you may have a keen eye to see, and that is that this guy fixes a problem that these two guys have. That problem being that the classic Destro has a big, giant, stupid head here, and the 25th anniversary version has a tiny, tiny little bean head there. They're both pretty fucking silly, but the main Destro right here in the middle does have a normal sized head. Alright guys, so this is the figure, this is the vehicle, and that was my review. And I had a really great time with this one, guys. This guy was well worth the wait, and we have got so much more in the pipeline for you for the next couple of months. So be sure to join us next time when I'll be playing with myself. And I hope you all had fun playing with yourselves too. Cobra! Thanks again for playing. If you like what you see, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you don't miss any more of our wacky content. See you again soon.